The fire that never goes out. Why humans can't stop talking. For most of history, the most dangerous thing you could do was be alone. If you were a lone hominid on the African savanna 200,000 years ago, you weren't just lonely, you were lunch. We didn't have the claws of a leopard or the sheer bulk of a hippo. What we had was each other. But there is a massive difference between standing next to someone and truly being with them. Today, we take our voices for granted. We complain about small talk, we doom scroll through millions of words a day, and we fret over the death of conversation. But if we peel back the layers of time, we find that human speech isn't just a way to order a coffee or argue about politics. It is an evolutionary survival suit, a biological miracle that turned a fragile ape into the master of the planet. This isn't just the story of how we learned to talk. This is the story of how gossip, storytelling, and the need to be heard literally reshaped our brains. The grooming revolution. Before we spoke, we touched. If you watch a group of chimpanzees today, you'll see them spending hours picking through each other's fur. This isn't just about hygiene. In the primate world, grooming is currency. It's how you say, "I've got your back," or "Please don't hit me." It releases oxytocin, lowers heart rates, and builds the social glue that holds a troop together, but there's a physical limit to grooming. You can only groom one person at a time, and you can only spend so many hours a day doing it before you starve to death. As our ancestors moved into larger groups to survive, we hit a social ceiling. We needed a way to bond with more people, faster. We needed vocal grooming. Imagine a group of early humans sitting around a flickering flame. Instead of picking lice off one another, they began to make sounds. These sounds eventually became words. Suddenly, you could groom 5 people at once just by talking to them. You could bond while your hands. The grooming revolution. Before we spoke, we touched. If you watch a group of chimpanzees today, you'll see them spending hours picking through each other's fur. This isn't just about hygiene. In the primate world, grooming is currency. It's how you say, "I've got your back," or "Please don't hit me." It releases oxytocin, lowers heart rates, and builds the social glue that holds a troop together, but there's a physical limit to grooming. You can only groom one person at a time, and you can only spend so many hours a day doing it before you starve to death. As our ancestors moved into larger groups to survive, we hit a social ceiling. We needed a way to bond with more people, faster. We needed vocal grooming. Imagine a group of early humans sitting around a flickering flame. Instead of picking lice off one another, they began to make sounds. These sounds eventually became words. Suddenly, you could groom 5 people at once just by talking to them. You could bond while your hands were busy sharpening tools or butchering meat. Evolutionary psychologist Robin Dunbar famously suggested that language evolved primarily so we could gossip. It sounds trivial, doesn't it? But gossip is the most important data a human can possess. Who is trustworthy? Who is a coward? Who is willing to share their food? Language allowed us to build a map of reputations. It allowed us to trust people we hadn't even met yet. That trust is the foundation of everything we've ever built. The architecture of the throat. To get to this point, our bodies had to undergo a radical, and frankly dangerous, transformation. If you look at a chimpanzee's throat, their larynx, the voice box, is high up. This allows them to breathe and swallow at the same time without choking. Human infants are born this way too, which is why they can nurse and breathe simultaneously, but around 3 months of age, the human larynx begins to drop. It moves down into the throat, creating an expanded chamber called the pharynx. This lower position gives us the incredible range of resonance and vowel sounds needed for complex speech, but there was a cost. By moving our voice box down, we created a permanent risk of choking on our food. Evolution doesn't make mistakes like that unless the payoff is massive. In the cold calculus of survival, the ability to share complex ideas was more valuable than the ability to swallow safely. We literally risked our lives for the sake of a conversation. The shared dream. Once we had the hardware, the throat and the brain, something magical happened. We stopped talking about what was and started talking about what could be. Every other animal communicates about the present. A vervet monkey has a specific alarm call for snake or eagle. It's an immediate, physical reality. But humans are the only creatures who can talk about things that don't exist. We can talk about the hunt that will happen tomorrow. We can talk about the ancestors who died 100 years ago. We can talk about gods, laws, and the concept of justice. This is what historians call the cognitive revolution. It allowed us to create shared myths. If you can convince 1,000 strangers to believe in the same invisible idea, whether it's a nation, a religion, or the value of a dollar bill, you can make those 1,000 strangers work together with the precision of a single hive mind. Storytelling became our ultimate weapon. The tribe with the best stories was the tribe that stayed together. The tribe that stayed together was the tribe that survived the winter. The loneliness of the modern voice. So, where does that leave us now? We live in an age of unprecedented noise. We are more connected than ever, yet studies show we are lonelier than almost any generation in history. Why? Perhaps it's because our brains are still wired for that campfire. We are biologically programmed for the subtle cues of speech, the tilt of a head, the micro-expression of a lip, the warmth of a voice echoing in a small space. When we strip language down to text on a screen, we are trying to run 200,000-year-old software on hardware it wasn't designed for. We lose the vocal grooming. We lose the oxytocin. We have the information, but we lack the connection. We often think of history as a series of wars, inventions, and kings. But the real history of humanity is the history of the flea. It's the story of how a weak, hairless primate decided that being heard was worth the risk of choking. It's the realization that our greatest superpower isn't our intelligence, but our ability to bridge the gap between two minds using nothing but air and intent. The next time you find yourself in a deep conversation that lasts until 2 a.m., or when you find yourself laughing at a story a friend is telling, remember that you are participating in an ancient ritual. You are using a tool that was forged in the African heat and tempered over 1,000,000 nights. We are the animals that talk. And as long as we keep talking, the fire never truly goes out. The ghost in the machine. Why humans are obsessed with the invisible. There is a strange behavior that almost every human on Earth shares, yet it's one we rarely stop to question. If you're walking through your house in the dark and you hear a floorboard creak, you don't just think, thermal expansion. You freeze. Your heart hammers against your ribs. For a split second, you feel a presence. You feel as though something, or someone, is watching you. We yell at our laptops when they crash. We apologize to a houseplant when we knock it over. We look at the clouds and see faces, or look at the stars and see hunters and bears. To a cold, logical observer, this is a glitch. It's a waste of energy. But to an evolutionary biologist, this glitch is the secret to our entire civilization. It is the story of how our brains became hyperactive pattern-seeking machines, and how that one trait allowed us to build empires out of thin air. The price of paranoia. To understand why we see ghosts in the shadows, we have to look at the math of survival. Imagine two early humans on the Pleistocene savanna. They both hear a rustle in the tall grass. The first human is a skeptic. He thinks, it's probably just the wind. He's right 99% of the time. But that 1% of the time when it's actually a leopard. He's removed from the gene pool. The second human is paranoid. He thinks, there's a predator there. He jumps back, heart racing. 99% of the time, he's wrong. It was just the wind. He looks a bit silly, and he's wasted a little bit of adrenaline. But that 1% of the time when it is a leopard, he survives. Evolution doesn't care if you're right. It only cares if you stay alive. Over millions of years, we were bred to be the descendants of the paranoid. We are the children of the apes who overinterpreted the world. This is called hyperactive agency detection. We are hardwired to assume that behind every effect, there is a cause, an agent with intent. We didn't just see the lightning, we saw the hand that threw it. The birth of the big why. This glitch did something profound to our psychology. It turned a world of random accidents into a world of meaning. When a drought hit or a child fell ill, our ancestors couldn't accept that it was just bad luck. Their brains demanded an agent. They asked, who did this? Why are they angry? What can we give them to make them stop? This was the birth of ritual. We began to bargain with the invisible. We started to treat the weather, the forest, and the sea as if they were people with moods and desires, but then, something even more transformative happened. We realized that if we could imagine invisible spirits, we could also imagine invisible rules. An ant obeys its colony because of pheromones. A wolf obeys its pack because of physical dominance. But a human can obey a king they have never met, or a law written on a piece of stone, or a concept like the future. We began to populate our world with social ghosts. Concepts like honor, debt, and nations don't exist in the physical world. You can't drop France on your toe. You can't put the economy under a microscope. These things only exist because we collectively agree to act as if they are real. We used our capacity for superstition to build the scaffolding of the modern world. The empathy paradox, this obsession with the agent, didn't just give us religion and government. It gave us each other, because we are constantly looking for the intent behind actions. We became the most socially intelligent creatures on the planet. We developed theory of mind, the ability to look at another person and realize that they have a hidden world inside them just as vivid as our own. We are the only animals that wonder what someone else is thinking about us. We can feel secondhand embarrassment for a stranger on a stage. We can weep for a character in a book who never existed. We have taken this survival mechanism, this fear of the leopard in the grass, and turned it into a bridge. We projected our own souls onto the universe, and in doing so, we learned how to find the soul in one another. The modern haunting, today, we like to think we've outgrown this. We have science. We have data. We know the floorboard creaked because of the temperature, and yet, we still name our cars. We still feel a vibe when we walk into an old building. We still feel like the universe is trying to tell us something when we see a string of coincidences. We aren't being irrational. We are being human. Our brains are still those 200,000-year-old machines, scanning the horizon for intent. We are still looking for the who behind the what. This is our great burden, but also our greatest gift. It's what makes us restless. It's what makes us curious. It's the reason we look at a cold, silent cosmos and refuse to believe we're alone. We are a species that cannot help but see meaning, even where there might be none. And perhaps that's for the best. Because a world without ghosts, without honor, without justice, without the invisible threads that tie us together, is a world where we're just another ape, waiting in the grass for the wind to blow. We chose the leopard. We chose the meaning. And we've been telling stories about it ever since. The inherited scar, why humans are the only animals that can't live in the present. If you watch a gazelle escape a lion, something remarkable happens about 10 minutes after the chase ends. The gazelle shakes its body, lets out a long breath, and goes right back to grazing. Its heart rate stabilizes. Its cortisol drops. For the gazelle, the trauma is over because the event is over, but if you, a human, barely avoid a car accident, you aren't grazing 10 minutes later. You're gripping the steering wheel. Your mind is replaying the what if. You're imagining the funeral you didn't have. You're feeling the adrenaline hit you again 3 hours later when you try to go to sleep. We are the only creatures on this planet that can be traumatized by things that haven't actually happened. We are the only ones who can suffer from a memory as if it were a physical wound. This is the story of the temporal prison. It is the story of how humanity traded the peace of the now for the power of the then, and how that trade created the modern world. The simulation machine. To understand why we can't just be, we have to look at the brain's most expensive piece of real estate, the prefrontal cortex. In most animals, the brain is a reactive organ. Input comes in, a response goes out. But in humans, the prefrontal cortex acts as a massive buffer. It allows us to unhook ourselves from the present moment. Biologically, we stopped living in the world and started living in a simulation. Think about it. Right now, as you listen to this, part of your brain is likely thinking about what you're having for dinner, or a mistake you made at work 4 years ago, or a bill that's due next Tuesday. You are physically in one place, but mentally. You are a time traveler. This was an evolutionary masterstroke. By simulating the future, we could avoid traps before we set foot in them. By obsessing over the past, we could analyze failures until they became lessons. We became the ultimate problem-solving machines because we could solve problems that weren't even there yet. The invention of anxiety, but this superpower came with a devastating side effect: anxiety. Anxiety is, quite literally, the price of foresight. It is the friction caused by our minds trying to live in a future that hasn't arrived. For our ancestors, that the future was a short-term concern. Will there be fruit on that tree tomorrow? But as our societies grew more complex, our future expanded. Suddenly, we weren't just worried about tomorrow's meal, we were worried about our reputation in the tribe, our legacy after death, the fate of our children's children. We created a world where the threats are no longer leopards, they are deadlines, social status, and retirement funds. These aren't physical things we can fight or flee from. They are abstract, temporal ghosts. Because we can't outrun a ghost, our bodies stay in a state of low-grade emergency. We are the only species that gives itself ulcers just by thinking. The architecture of hope. If this sounds like a design flaw, look at the flip side. That same ability to suffer in the future is the only reason we have a future. Hope is the positive version of anxiety. It is the ability to look at a barren field and see a harvest. It's the ability to look at a block of marble and see a statue. Every great human achievement, from the cathedrals of Europe to the Apollo moon landings, required someone to be deeply dissatisfied with it now. We had to be able to imagine a version of reality that was better than the one we were standing in. We built the world because we were the only animals uncomfortable enough to change it. If we were content like the gazelle, we would still be on the savannah. We traded our tranquility for the stars, the collective memory. This temporal shift also changed how we love. Most animals mourn, but humans remember. We build monuments. We write biographies. We have anniversaries. We carry the dead with us, not as heavy weights, but as active participants in our lives. Because we can move through time mentally, our relationships aren't limited by a pulse. We can be inspired by a philosopher who died 2,000 years ago. We can feel a deep responsibility toward a great-grandchild we will never meet. This is what makes us human. We are a bridge between the no longer and the not yet. The collective memory. This temporal shift also changed how we love. Most animals mourn, but humans remember. We build monuments. We write biographies. We have anniversaries. We carry the dead with us, not as heavy weights, but as active participants in our lives. Because we can move through time mentally, our relationships aren't limited by a pulse. We can be inspired by a philosopher who died 2,000 years ago. We can feel a deep responsibility toward a great-grandchild we will never meet. This is what makes us human. We are a bridge between the no longer and the not yet. Breaking the prison. So, how do we live with this? How do we carry a brain designed for time travel in a world that only happens in the present? Perhaps the mindfulness craze of the 21st century isn't just a trend. It's a survival mechanism. It's a way for us to occasionally click the simulation off and remind ourselves that, for this exact second, the lion isn't biting. We are a strange, beautiful paradox. We are the architects of the future, built out of the scars of the past, struggling to survive the present. We are the only animals that know we are going to die, and because of that, we are the only animals that can truly decide how to live. We are burdened by time, yes. But we are also the only ones who can make time matter. Don't just watch the clock. Remember that you are the only thing in the known universe that knows the clock is even there. And that, in itself, is a miracle.